The shot echoed through Ewing Oil. Single, sharp, final, then silence. The kind of silence that comes after something irreversible happens. After a line gets crossed that can't be uncrossed. J.R. Ewing stumbled backward. His hand went to his chest, blood spreading across his white shirt. Dark, wet, real. His face showed confusion first, then shock, then something close to disbelief. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not to him. Not to J.R. Ewing. He fell. The camera pulled back, showed his body on the carpet, the blood pooling, the office empty, except for him. No witnesses, no answers, just J.R. Ewing shot and dying on the floor of his own empire. Then the screen went black. America lost its mind. March 21st, 1980. The episode aired on a Friday night. By Saturday morning, who shot J.R. was the only question that mattered. Water cooler conversations, newspaper headlines, magazine covers, T-shirts, bumper stickers. The entire country obsessed with finding out who pulled the trigger. Vegas set odds. Kristin Shepard, 8-1. Sue Ellen, 3-1. Cliff Barnes, 2-1. Everyone was a suspect. Everyone had motive. J.R. Ewing had spent years making enemies. The list of people who wanted him dead was longer than the Dallas phone book. The show went on summer hiatus. 8 months. 8 months of speculation and theories and wild guesses. CBS played it perfectly, kept the secret locked down tighter than Fort Knox. Even the cast didn't know. The actors filmed multiple endings, each one showing a different person as the shooter. That way no one could leak, no one could spoil the biggest mystery in television history. Larry Hagman milked it. Did interviews where he hinted and teased and revealed nothing. He knew what the show had stumbled into. Lightning in a bottle. Cultural phenomenon. The kind of moment that transcends television and becomes something bigger. Because it wasn't really about who shot J.R. It was about investment. About a country so connected to these characters that they needed to know what happened next. Needed justice or revenge or closure or whatever it was that would make the story complete. 8 months of waiting. Then November 21st, 1980, the reveal episode, the highest rated television episode in history up to that point. 83 million people watching. Entire cities quiet. Everyone gathered around TVs waiting for the answer. Who shot J.R.? The episode played it slow, drew it out, showed J.R. in the hospital, showed the investigation. The suspects brought in one by one. Sue Ellen drunk and confused. Cliff Barnes defiant. Alan Beam nervous. Vaughn Leland calculating. Everyone with opportunity. Everyone with motive. Then the flashback. J.R. in his office. Working late. The door opening. Someone walking in. The camera staying on J.R.'s face. Showing his expression change from irritation to something else. Recognition. Almost amusement. "What are you doing here?" he asked. The gun appeared, small, silver, shaking in someone's hand. "You can't be serious," J.R. said. His voice was calm, dismissive. The way he talked to people he didn't consider threats. The gun fired. And finally, the camera showed who held it. Kristin Shepard, Sue Ellen's little sister, a sweet girl from the country who'd come to Dallas innocent and wide-eyed, who'd gotten a job at Ewing Oil, who'd become J.R.'s secretary, who'd fallen into his orbit and his bed and his web of manipulation. Kristin, not Sue Ellen, not Cliff, not any of the obvious suspects, but the one person no one saw coming because she was supposed to be a victim. One more woman J.R. had used and discarded, except she'd fought back. The reveal was perfect. Shocking but logical. The clues had been there. Kristin pregnant with J.R.'s baby. Kristin trying to tell him. J.R. dismissing her, offering money to make her go away. Treating her like she was nothing. Like she was disposable. She loved him, really loved him. And he'd thrown her away like trash. So she'd gotten a gun, walked into his office, and pulled the trigger. America's reaction was complicated. Some people were disappointed. They'd wanted it to be Sue Ellen, wanted the wife finally standing up to the husband. Others were satisfied. Kristin made sense, had motive, had access, had been pushed too far by a man who pushed everyone too far. But everyone agreed on one thing. The 8-month wait had been worth it. The mystery had delivered. Dallas had pulled off the impossible, created a moment of television that the whole country experienced together. The truth behind the mystery, though, that's more interesting than the mystery itself. The writers hadn't planned it. Not originally. The season ended with J.R. shot because they needed a cliffhanger, needed something to bring viewers back. But they didn't know who the shooter was, hadn't decided. The script just said someone shoots J.R. and left it blank. During the hiatus, they debated, fought, argued over which choice would be best dramatically. Sue Ellen was too obvious. Cliff Barnes too expected. They needed someone surprising but believable. Someone who could pull the trigger and make the audience understand why. Kristin Shepard was perfect. She'd been introduced as a minor character, sweet Sue Ellen's little sister. But Mary Crosby had played her with layers, vulnerability that hardened into something else when J.R. got his hooks in her. You could see her changing, see the innocence dying, see the woman who'd been used too many times finally breaking. The affair between J.R. and Kristin had been toxic from the start. He'd seduced her, not because he wanted her particularly, but because she was there, because she was Sue Ellen's sister, because he could. That's what J.R. did. He took, he used, he moved on. Kristin had been different, though. She'd actually believed him when he said she was special, when he hinted at a future together, when he made her feel like she mattered. She was young enough and naive enough to think J.R. Ewing could love someone beyond himself. Then she got pregnant. She'd been happy at first, thought this would change things, that J.R. would leave Sue Ellen, that they'd be together, that the baby would make him see her as more than a mistress. Instead, he'd offered her money, told her to handle it, made it clear that she was an inconvenience, a problem to be solved, nothing more. That's when something in Kristin broke, when she realized she'd been played, used, treated like every other woman who'd been foolish enough to believe J.R. Ewing's lies. The gun had been easy to get. Texas in 1980. Small enough to fit in her purse. Loaded it, practiced in her apartment. Imagining J.R.'s face, imagining the moment when he'd realized she wasn't weak, wasn't disposable, wasn't nothing. She'd gone to Ewing Oil that night with clarity. No hesitation, no second thoughts. She was going to kill J.R. Ewing, or at least hurt him the way he'd hurt her. When she walked into his office, he'd barely looked up, didn't see her as a threat. Even when she pulled the gun, he'd actually smiled like it was a joke, like she was a child playing dress-up. "You can't be serious," he'd said. That smile, that dismissive tone, that absolute certainty that she wouldn't do it, that she couldn't do it. That's what made her pull the trigger. Not rage, not passion, not even revenge exactly. Just the need to prove she existed, that she mattered, that J.R. Ewing couldn't just erase her from his life without consequences. A bullet hit him in the chest, knocked him backward. The smile disappeared, replaced by shock, by pain, by the realization that he'd miscalculated, that Kristin Shepard had been more dangerous than he'd thought. She'd stood there for a moment, gun still in her hand, watching him fall, watching the blood spread, feeling nothing, no satisfaction, no horror, just emptiness. Then she'd run. The confession came later. After weeks of investigation, after every suspect had been questioned, after Sue Ellen had been arrested and released, after the police had exhausted every lead, Kristin walked into the police station and told the truth. She'd shot J.R. Ewing. She was ready to face the consequences, except there weren't any. Not really. J.R. survived, refused to press charges, not because he forgave her, but because pressing charges meant admitting she'd gotten close enough to shoot him, meant looking weak, meant giving the world another story about J.R. Ewing's affairs and the women he'd destroyed. Better to let it go, let Kristin disappear, let the whole thing fade into Dallas history. But Kristin didn't disappear, not right away. She stayed in Dallas, kept the baby, named her Christopher, raised him alone, a living reminder of what J.R. had done to her, of the bullet she'd put in his chest. Mary Crosby later said playing Kristin during that time was fascinating. because the character had crossed a line, had committed attempted murder, but the audience sympathized with her, understood her. Some even cheered for her. Because J.R. Ewing was compelling, but he was also monstrous. And sometimes monsters need to be stopped. Even if the person stopping them is broken and desperate and way over their head. Larry Hagman understood that too. He played J.R.'s reaction to the revelation perfectly. Not anger exactly. More like respect. Grudging acknowledgement that Kristin had surprised him, that she'd been more than he'd given her credit for. There was even a scene after the reveal where J.R. visited Kristin, looked at her with something almost like admiration. "You almost killed me," he said. "I wish I had," she replied. He smiled. That J.R. Ewing smile that said everything. "No, you don't. Because then you'd be a murderer. Instead, you're just the woman who shot me and got away with it. That's better. That's a story you can tell." It was quintessential J.R. Taking something that should have destroyed him and turning it into legend. The man who got shot and survived, who stared down death and won. But Kristin had won too, in her own way. She'd proven she wasn't weak, wasn't forgettable, had put a bullet in J.R. Ewing and lived to tell about it. The Who Shot J.R. phenomenon changed television forever. Showed networks that cliffhangers could be cultural events, that serialized storytelling could hook audiences in ways episodic television couldn't. Every show after Dallas tried to replicate that moment, that water cooler mystery, that shared experience. None of them succeeded quite the same way, because Dallas had caught lightning in a bottle, had the right character, the right moment, the right mystery. J.R. Ewing was hated and loved in equal measure. People wanted him dead and wanted him to survive. The tension was perfect. And Kristin as the shooter was the perfect answer. Surprising but earned. Dramatic but logical. A reminder that J.R.'s worst enemy wasn't a business rival or a vengeful ex-wife. It was the trail of broken people he left in his wake, one of whom eventually decided to fight back. The aftermath was messy. Kristin's story didn't end well. She died a few years later, drowned in a pool at South Fork. The official story was accident. But there were always questions, always whispers that maybe it was suicide, that maybe the woman who shot J.R. Ewing couldn't live with what she'd become. Bobby ended up raising Christopher, J.R.'s biological son raised by his brother. Another complication in the Ewing family saga. Another reminder that actions have consequences, that bullets and babies and broken women don't just disappear because you want them to. J.R. never forgot. You could see it sometimes. A flicker across Larry Hagman's face when Kristin's name came up, when he saw Christopher. A reminder that he'd been vulnerable once, that someone had gotten close enough to hurt him. It made him harder, more careful, more ruthless. If sweet Kristin Shepard could pull a trigger, anyone could. Trust no one. Assume everyone wants something. Keep your enemies close and your lovers at arm's length. The bullet wound healed. The scar remained, physical and otherwise. Years later, Larry Hagman would joke about it in interviews. Say that getting shot was the best thing that ever happened to J.R. Ewing. Made him iconic. Made him immortal. Turned a TV character into a cultural touchstone. But there was truth underneath the joke. The shooting elevated Dallas from popular show to phenomenon. Made J.R. Ewing more than a villain. Made him a symbol of excess and ambition, and the price of treating people like they're disposable. Kristin Shepard pulled the trigger. 83 million people watched the reveal, and television was never quite the same. The truth behind TV's biggest mystery wasn't just who shot J.R. It was why. Why someone sweet and innocent could transform into someone capable of murder. Why a man like J.R. Ewing inspired that kind of desperate violence. Why audiences were so invested in the answer that they waited 8 months and tuned in by the millions. Because the story was bigger than the mystery. It was about consequences, about chickens coming home to roost, about a man who'd spent years hurting people finally getting hurt himself. Kristin Shepard was small, young, pregnant, scared. Everything J.R. wasn't. But she walked into his office with a gun and changed television history. proved that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one you don't see coming, the one you underestimated, the one you dismissed, the one you thought was nothing. She pulled the trigger. America held its breath. And J.R. Ewing learned that everyone has a breaking point, even sweet girls from the country with nowhere else to go. The shot echoed through Ewing Oil, through Dallas, through American television, and nothing was ever quite the same.